Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daren Maloney, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees and a Senior Vice President in the Commercial Banking Group at PNC. Great to see everyone here today for an important topic that touches many of us. Today, our forum, Life After Prison, a Community Effort, is brought to us in partnership with the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County. Help me thank them for their support today. It seems that the 80s and 90s mantra of tough on crime has turned out to be tough on a lot of things. Tough on kids, tough on families, tough on neighborhoods, and tough on state and local budgets. There must be a better way. To provide the details, we turn to our experts today. Please help me welcome Director of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, Gary Mohr. Professor of Sociology at The Ohio State University, Paul Bellair, on the far end. And CEO of Proteam Solutions Inc, Keith Stevens. And President and CEO of Alvis, Denise Robinson, our moderator today. Denise, the podium is yours. Please welcome all of our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining me today. I also would like to thank the Columbus Metropolitan Club for their efforts to raise awareness on this issue because this does affect every community in our nation. More than 6.8 million people in the United States are in state or federal prison, in jail, or on community supervision. That equates to 1 in 36 Americans. In Ohio, the number of people going to prison has increased by more than 400% over the past 35 years. Due to these sheer numbers, it is almost a certainty that each of us knows a justice-involved individual. The dramatic increase in the number of justice-involved people was not in response to increase in crimes, but rather a result in changes in public policy and sentencing. Right now, Ohio faces an epidemic of heroin overdoses, and until fairly recently, the emphasis was on punishment, not on treatment. Nationally, more than 95% of all incarcerated individuals, a total of more than 655,000 each year, complete their sentences and return to our communities. These individuals face multiple and complex barriers, including a lack of education or work skills, substance abuse, mental health issues, and housing shortages, and very much more issues. Reentry is a community issue. Helping these individuals to be successful is critical to both public safety and to communities who are hoping to build vibrant futures. Today's conversation is focused on the programs, services, and opportunities that need to be provided to promote successful reentry. A discussion about reentry could take days. Today, we'll just have time to touch on the following goals of successful reentry. Number one, preventing crime. We want to ensure that these individuals do not, and I repeat, do not, return to the criminal justice system. Number two, strengthening justice-involved families. In the United States, more than 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives. Children always experience the loss of a parent as a traumatic event. Number three, building vibrant neighborhoods and communities. Neighborhoods with above average percentages of justice-involved individuals are also affected by poverty and many other issues. That is a pretty devastating introduction to this topic. But wait, there is hope. You may not know this, but Ohio is the rock star in the correction world. We have one of the lowest recidivism rates in the nation. After 3 years, Ohio has a recidivism rate of 27.5%, compared to the national average recidivism rate of 49.5%. Our success is a result of the state's long history of partnerships between governmental agencies, researchers, human service agencies, and businesses that are committed to working together to implement best practices that are proven to increase public safety. I am honored today to be joined by a panel of Ohio's experts who set the standard of excellence. I would like to start our forum today by just asking each of them a question to shed some light on their perspective on reentry. I would call him Director Mohr, but he'll kill me if I do. So, Gary. Gary, since becoming the director of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections in 2011, you've changed the way ODRC does business. Can you tell us a little bit more about your commitment to adopting a reentry approach to offender treatment?
Well, thanks for being here. And briefly, let me just say this. I'm an old prison guy, right? I'm an old prison warden, and this is my 42nd year in the business. Our future's in the community and will be measured in the community. And let me just say three things I think that come to mind. The first thing we did was we changed our mission. And it wasn't this page-and-a-half mission statement that no one knew. It was a mission statement simply that says, our job, our focus, our role, our calling is to reduce recidivism among those we touch. In other words, we focus and charge ourselves with turning people back to the community better than they were when they came in. Secondly, create reintegration units in our prisons. This is a very simple concept. Our prisons and what we expect in prisons should reflect what we expect in a community. So we created these environments. We now have 12 reintegration units all over Ohio where our folks inside prisons are working 8 to 10 hours a day. In some cases, they're working out in the communities. We're sending people out in the communities to do work, around 11 pathways, and try to bring families as much as we can into this. But we expect people to act just like they would in the community instead of just dropping them in the community at the end of the sentence. And finally, we need to continue what we've started in prison in the community. Drug treatment. Mental health treatment needs to be continued. Program completion doesn't get done inside a prison. It's a lifelong journey. And quite frankly, with the expansion of Medicaid, we now have the ability to enact programs inside our prisons and have service providers in the communities that are in line with what we're attempting to do in the prison and continue through electronic health records their programming and their life journey in the community to support that. So I think those are three things that our focus has right now, because our best days, the best days of all people, need to be ahead of them and not behind them.
Thank you, Gary. And I won't say Dr. Bellair either, because I'll say Paul. You've had an extensive body of research that examines the impact that employment and personal networks and other factors have on the risk of an individual, that an individual will return to prison. How has your research helped practitioners to understand punishment alone will not change behavior?
Well, I would say in some respects that getting practitioners to pay attention to your work is not really a big issue in Ohio. It really is very impressive how, to me, Ohio has such a strong focus on rehabilitation and a commitment to rehabilitation, and that's part of what they do on a day-to-day basis. And this extends to the prison system and as well also into community corrections. But I think the way that you really get practitioners to pay attention to your work is to really focus on what matters. And the literature is really pretty clear. There are a set of criminogenic needs that individuals have as they exit prison. And so you need to deal with those things. These are the things that continuously cause former inmates to repeat the mistakes and continue to do the things that they were doing before that led them to their incarceration spell. So criminogenic needs are things like their attitudes, who they're spending time with, possibly thinking errors pertaining to how one responds to frustration, and how one responds to those kinds of things. How do you deal with things when things don't go your way? and a couple of the other things that have been mentioned by Gary, the drug and alcohol addiction problems, as well as mental health, both of which are huge criminogenic needs for individuals as they exit prison.
Thank you. Keith, you're looking at me like.
That's Dr. Keith.
Dr. Keith.
That's Dr. Keith.
Oh, jeez. You've been involved as a trustee at a lot of nonprofits that served criminal justice involvement population for over a decade. I know this, and you have also hired a number of former offenders. And over the years, and as a business person, why are you interested in working with this population?
Well, so let me start at the beginning. In 1992, I had an idea to start a company. I had $500, so my options were very limited. I needed to find an opportunity that the barriers of entry were low. So I looked at temporary staffing. The only location I could afford was at Main and Champion, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that part of the city. And if you go back to 1992, you have a different memory. That was a different looking area. So we opened up. I had no fear that I could sell it. My concern was, could I find a workforce? And setting up on the corner in a storefront with signs everywhere about having jobs, employing kids in the neighborhood to go out and pass out flyers. The goal was that people who had been deemed the hardcore unemployable for various reasons, not just being ex-offenders, it could be that they were drug or alcohol abusers, sexual violence, etc. We knew that we should have a ready-made workforce there. This was in '92, just after a recession. So we opened up, and it was a while before we got jobs. But the people that were coming in were people who had had instances of exposure and run-ins with criminal justice. And we had to make a decision then, could we get past that with potential clients? I'm going to tell you a quick story about a gentleman named John D. That was his real name. I don't remember his last name, but John D is anonymous enough that you won't know who I'm talking about. A gentleman was coming in our office every day. He had just got out of the institution having done 10 years. He came in every day, filled out the application. We didn't have work. As a matter of fact, he probably put more pressure on me than anyone to go out and find opportunity, right? He was starting to get frustrated and was really speaking to us in a pretty aggressive way, like we had some responsibility for him, and that's okay. That was fine. His aggressiveness actually spurred me harder to go sell an opportunity. We finally got one with a local hotel. They wanted their vinyl tile stripped. This was about a week and a half job. I called back to the office. I had one employee. He was part-time. He was on Social Security, so I was able to pay him under the table. I hope the IRS isn't here. Paid him under the table, $50 a week to sit there and answer the phone. I called Bill, and I said, Bill, is John there? And he said, no, he's not here. Well, I got an opportunity for him. So we're cheering, and we're really excited about it. But he's got to be there at 4 o'clock. I'm going to drive him out, and it's 2 o'clock and no John. Finally, 3 o'clock, here he comes in the door. He's looking his normal way of looking like he's got nothing happening with us. He looked dejected and depressed, etc. We came in, we gave him the exciting news about this opportunity, and he just exhaled, pulled out his .38, put it on the counter, and we took him to work. That was what hit me square in the face. And I don't know if it wasn't that he was robbing people, that was more for protection, but that was the culture we were dealing with. Fast forward, he was one of our best employees, ultimately got a full-time job working with the Galbraith companies, doing commercial cleaning, one of their best employees. So it was that instance and and many more stories like that I wanted to get more involved. It didn't hurt that Community Connection actually rented space from me, so I was on their board, but they actually paid rent. I think Alvis paid rent to me for a while, so that didn't hurt. Understand, the entrepreneurial piece was still there. But that's been my commitment, is just knowing that there are people out there who have the stigma. Oftentimes they buy into it. They get one no, get another no, they're done. They stop looking. What we found over years of experience was that this is a motivated group of people who are loyal. The turnover rate is so much lower. All they need is an opportunity. And I wouldn't be sitting here today. The first 8 years of our business, primarily we were supporting industrial needs for organizations around Central Ohio. We're in technology now, and I don't have the opportunity to make those hires now. We've got other ways that we support that group. However, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people who had been to prison, who had crack habits, who had heroin habits, who had alcohol substance abuse issues. I would not be sitting here now if it wasn't for them. Let me say this, too. $24 million over 8 years of revenue, and we had less than $1,500 worth of complaints around theft. You do the math.
Denise, I don't care if you listen to anything else I say. I've got to say something, Keith, that based on what you just said. And, you know, people that are in prison, people that are under supervision are just what I said. They're people. We got to stop talking about them like they're something less than human beings. They're Ohioans. And I will tell you this, Keith, if it were certain people that caused you to be here, I was headed to prison, folks. I raised myself. Had it not been for 2 or 3 people in my life that picked me up, I would have spent 42 years on the other side of prison, and I know that. And I think that when we start putting ourselves above those that we are committed to working with in prison and coming out, we have issues. And it's not them, it's us, folks. And I will tell you, that is the barrier. Listen, I believe that is the single biggest barrier to reentry is our perception that somehow people wearing blue shirts and numbers on them are less than human being. And I would just subscribe to you this. Get inside a prison like so many of the people I met earlier today are in our prisons, Kairos, prison ministries coming in. People know this. You're looking at human beings when you work with our people, and you know that. And I just think that more than anything else in this whole program, what Keith touched on is a critical issue. It's not an analytical study of those people. It's looking at us and knowing that every one of us have made mistakes, folks. And let's understand it. And I think God made us to believe that life is good. And if we can put our worth and our effort in other people to make them smile and their children smile and their families smile, I think it's a great life and I think it's a great calling.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that deserves another hand. There was 2 things that were said, and Keith said about opportunities, and that took me right to the movie Annie and the song about opportunities, because you're exactly right. That's exactly what they need is an opportunity. And then, Gary, you touched on the people issue. Of our 500 staff, when I talk to the new hire class, the first thing I say is, if you want to treat one of my clients like they're less than people, this isn't the job for you, because this is not the place for you to work. So thank you all for those comments. And while we're talking, Gary, I want to talk just a little bit. If you can explain a little bit more about collateral sanctions. That always comes up a lot of times about collateral sanctions and why Ohio's passage of the legislation to limit them is so very important to reentry.
Well, it starts with everybody makes mistakes, right? And I think that if we have so many people, our recidivism rate is almost half of what the national average is, which means that we have a lot of people leaving prison that are doing a good job, not coming back and trying to make it. A 6-month sentence or even a sentence of probation could be a life sentence. If you don't believe it, ask some people who are trying to return, ask some people trying to get employment, ask some people who are being restricted from housing, and ask the deep-seated stigma that they feel. So I think that as we move forward, we need those people that have turned their life around, we need to acknowledge them and not continue to hold that against them. Our collateral consequence legislation was passed in 2012. Quite frankly, was a good start, but it's only a start. We need, as we look at our recodification effort that's going on right now, looking at the criminal code being rewritten, we need to look for ways where we expand judicial discretion, reduce the mandatory sentences that judges have to give, and then provide incentives that people can have through these judicial diversion programs. They complete judicial diversion, they complete drug treatment, they get employment, they're in pro-social environment. Well, let's find an easier way than going through all the bureaucratic process of filing to allow that to be expunged and sealed so that they are redeemed as a human being. So I think this is an important part of the recodification effort. 2012 collateral consequence was just a start. And I think that we have a long way to go to look at sealing records of people that have demonstrated a pro-social way of living. And I believe that's important if we're ever going to fully support reentry.
Right. Thank you. Paul, based on your research, read a lot of it, and thanks for having me come to your class several times to talk with your classmates. But what can you tell us about the impact of employment?
Great question. And it's a topic about which a lot is written. If you talk to parole officers or probation officers, they will tell you that employment is not considered a primary criminogenic need. And this is because there are many people who don't commit crimes and who are not employed. There's a lot of roles that one could play where they're not employed. But they do look at it as a secondary need. But I would argue that employment is really critical because in many ways it helps address those primary criminogenic needs. Your primary need might be you're hanging around with the wrong people. Work is going to structure your day. You're going to have to get to bed early at night. You got to get up. You got to go to work. It's going to tire you out and so forth. In a very superficial way, employment is a kind of a form of social incapacitation where you're at work, you're working. You can't, unless you're committing crimes at your place of work, you cannot be out doing other things that you shouldn't be doing. And so on that level, it's a positive. But from the perspective that I take on employment, what is really critical about it is that it can foster a deep bond of commitment towards the employer and towards the community. And as individuals begin to embrace that bond and take that very seriously, they are much less likely to make bad choices. They're going to think about everything that they have built up and over time in terms of that employment. Maybe they've gotten a promotion. And when other opportunities come in front of them, such as illegal opportunities, they're going to think about what they've built up and that commitment that they have and everything that they have to lose. So we talk about in criminology stakes in conformity and so forth. And so that's really why employment is so critical. And from this perspective, just having a job and just showing up for a job, but if you hate that job, that's not likely to have much influence over your behavior. It's only when the employment opportunity is fostering this kind of deep commitment on your part that it's going to change your behavior. And Denise mentioned a little bit about some of my research, and so I have been collecting a lot of data from the Ohio prisons and so forth to study these kinds of things. And so one study was I talked to a sample of about 250 inmates who were minimum and medium security inmates, and asked them about their employment records immediately before they came into prison. And what that reveals is that there is about half of all of those inmates reported they were consistently in the labor market during about 18-month period before they came into prison. So there is really good reason to be optimistic that those people will be able to restore their lives and really become restored citizens in all its dimensions. Another quarter of that sample was sporadically in the labor market, and the remaining quarter was not in the labor market at all. That is, they did not work at all during that period. So there are a lot of challenges there, but and in particular, for the people who worked during that period and who were very committed to their jobs, what I found is that that was associated with less street crime. And so extrapolating from that, we need to find ways to keep people connected to the labor market as they move through the criminal justice system and come back into the community. And that begins in prison where they're working and finding ways to maintain that continuity when they come back into the community and fostering that deep commitment to the labor market.
Thank you. And Keith, I want to talk just a little bit, as a member of the board of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, what do you see as the barriers for hiring justice-involved individuals, number one, and number two is what can be done to overcome them?
So, thank you. Not only for those members, those companies, but even for our business model changed pretty dramatically after 9/11. 9/11, and if you may recall, there was a recession going on as well, not as major as 2008, but a recession nevertheless. Our clients became much more discerning about who could come in their facility. They started requiring very thorough national background screens, Social Security verification, 10-panel drug screens. So it really eliminated our ability to be able to utilize the same workforce that we'd utilized before. And I would argue that some of those companies today, Cardinal Health is a client of ours. Cardinal has a brand that they're concerned about. They've got other security and risk scenarios that they worry about. They've got employees. And I think for some companies, it's very difficult to publicly embrace the concept. Now, I would tell you, and I know for certain, there's shadow hiring going on, right? There's hiring of ex-offenders going on in the shadows. Some major corporations in our market and others, but they can't be public about it. They resist that. It's still a stigma. One of the things we talked about with you in our strategic planning sessions was how do we impact that stigma? How do we change that mindset? And I think once that happens with some of these major corporations, we'll see them become a little more open to it. I think it's going to be an effort of advocacy and education. I think some of those shadow hiring and experiences that have yielded good results can become case studies and be socialized, but somebody's got to start it. What I know is this conversation is taking place around the country. Everyone understands there's a need and there's a challenge. For our business model changed. I mentioned that. We're 100% in technology. Technology is a tough space to even begin to have that conversation about ex-offenders. But there are companies out there that are doing training that are focused on trying to make that happen. The major thing for me that I would argue I could get any company to hire an ex-offender, me personally, is I can make a business case for it, right? And so what's happening now, the unemployment rate is at 5%, I think. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm close. And then you've got the exit of the baby boomers. It is a convergence of different issues that are going to create opportunity like we've not seen before for ex-offenders. And I don't know if that's the right term. Is that the politically correct term?
No.
Restored citizens.
Restored citizens.
Reestablished.
Sorry about that.
I don't like any of them.
Yeah.
They're Ohioans.
But it's Ohioans, right? Ohioans who deserve opportunity, right? And so while our business model has changed, it's funny how I continue to have these connections. We, in 2008, started supporting Central Ohio Workforce Investment Corp, payrolling their summer and year-round youth and young adults. These are people with barriers. Oftentimes, some of that has to do with experiences with the criminal justice system. The Restoration Academy, I don't know if you've heard of that. We payroll all those people. We give financial literacy to all those people. So why my main business is not necessarily employing them, we still have another subsidiary that is heavily engaged in it. And finally, I would just add this. Treatment transfer is a piece that just came out. we won and just built the application that's going to do that tracking. So the connection for me is many different ways. But I think for employers, the stigma has to change. We've got to get someone to begin to have that conversation and embrace it. And I don't know if that's happened yet. I think I see companies that are heavily in manufacturing or construction, they're more than willing to talk about their success rates with this audience. But some of the major organizations, while I think, again, and this is public sector as well, my friends from Franklin County Auditor's Office, sorry, there's hiring happening, and we need to be okay talking about it. I think that would spurn a bigger effort.
Well, let me just build on it. I love following you because you stimulate all these ideas. But folks, hey, for all the employers out there, we've got people over here, see us, come into our prison before people leave. Let's don't wait till people, put yourself in their shoes. They're leaving, their head's spinning, what am I going to do, where am I going, what's my family going to think? Let's get the employment taken care of before they leave. And what we will welcome is our employers coming in. We will help train the folks. We will eliminate the training period. We will let you hire people while they're still inside our prisons, give them a sense of hope, and have them leave with a job with the training already complete. And we're doing that. Think about truck driving. There's 50,000 truck driving vacancies in this country. We are training inmates to be truck drivers, not just on the simulators. I've got semis out in front of a couple of prisons. They're helping drive. We're taking them down to the Department of Motor Vehicles. They're getting an actual license, not a temporary license. And we've got a firm out of Youngstown, Ohio, that is hiring every single person that is leaving our prison with one of these CDLs, every one of them. And if you think it's not safe, it's like being an aircraft carrier, right? You've got these trucks have got all kind of electronic tracking and everything else. This is the kind of partnership that we want. We don't want to wait till people leave and hope they get a job. Let's bring employers into our prisons, into our 12 reintegration units where we have people that are working 8 to 10 hours a day. We will train them, we'll get them ready, we'll employ them, and that gives not just those folks a sense of hope, it gives 50,812 inmates as of this morning hope because they're looking at other inmates getting a job. Get inside our prisons. We got people over here who will take your identification, get you in, and I'll tell you what, we drug test our people. I hear all this, employers can't find people that can't pass a drug test. We drug test our people. Come on in. Yeah.
So we have about 2 minutes, and so I'm going to just quickly talk briefly about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is our families and our communities, and the result of the impact of someone involved in the criminal justice system and what that does to our families and to our neighborhoods and our communities. And I know that at Alvis we had to start a family and children's program because we wanted to make sure that those neighborhoods and those families were repaired. And I know, Gary, for you, and I think Keith, we've had some conversations about this too, about the impact of incarceration. You know, I use this term like a stone's throw in a pond. The effects of a person's incarceration and radiates outward, and but that's outward to our families and to our kids. And what we don't want to see is our kids ending up in the same place where their parents are. So if any of you can just weigh in on that.
I'll just say, after 42 years, it's still hard for me to go to a visiting room and watch the end of visiting and watch a 5-year-old child not understand why their mom or dad, mostly moms now on the increase, we have a tendency to want to send women to prison in this state, or can't come home. Folks, children of the incarcerated are 6 times more likely to be in prison than children who do not have a parent in prison. This is a generational issue. And I do want to conclude on this part. The best effort to reenter someone is not to have them enter at all. Those people that are nonviolent, addicted, mentally ill folks. I've got 10,600 mentally ill people in our prisons. Largest mental health provider in Ohio. So I would just suggest that We need to think about this next generation. And I just want to say this. My goal would be to reduce the amount of money coming to me and for our prisons by reducing about 3 or 4 prisons in this state, cutting the number of people, and reinvesting earlier in people's life in a preventative mode, and that includes the children, and getting people mental health treatment before they pick up a gun and do something stupid, or before they do something else that will become a lifelong sentence with some collateral consequences.
And thank you. In a few minutes, we'll move to audience questions. I hope the discussion so far has been helpful to help you to understand that communities need support, and we need support for reentry efforts. Before we do that, let me just ask the panelists one more question, and it's just going to be one question. And it's for Paul, actually. And just if you can tell us how the rising, how many folks are going through the university, the Ohio State University, that you're seeing that are really passionate about this issue?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that we have a lot of really interested criminology majors and students from other majors as well that flock into our criminology classes and flock into I teach a class called Prisons and Jails, and it's full every semester, and there's a tremendous amount of interest in corrections. And one of the things that I like to do is to take them to the local jails and prisons. And so we go to the Jackson Pike jail, we go to the Pickaway Correctional Facility, we go to the Ohio Reformatory for Women, and several others. Last year we went up to the Mansfield Correctional facility. So I try very hard to give them exposure to the system, and really there's at least a group of about 10 out of the 50 every year that are really interested in going into corrections, and it's something that I tout to them. Many of them think, when you think criminal justice, I want to be a police officer or an agent of some sort. And so I emphasize all of the great opportunities in corrections and how important the work is. So there's good reasons to be optimistic about it.
And I just want to make one other comment about the research and universities and why Ohio is so successful, and that is because we do our work based on the research. There is nothing that any community organization or even our prisons does that's not based on the research, because my thought has always been, why do something if it doesn't work? And so we want to make sure that it works, and the research is a very important piece to all of our work. It is CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Please state your name, ask your question, and we thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. Let's proceed with the first question.
Hello, my name is Mary Urena, and I want to thank you all for the impassioned discussion today. Until Gary mentioned it in his last comment, we spoke in generalities about prisoners and ex-offenders. And I was curious, based on either research or your own experience, are there any gender differences that we as a community need to address?
I'll be brief in my response as well. In Ohio, specifically, we are seeing an alarming rate of women coming to prison, much higher spiked increase than males. And if we look at the difference between men and women coming to prison, we see women that are less violent, even though the spike of increase coming in is a huge spike. We see women having a significantly higher degree of mental illness than the male counterparts. And we actually see, we use the Texas Christian University instrument for level of addiction, and we actually see our women coming in that actually have a higher rate of addiction than our male population. That's why Gary Mohr will never build another prison while I'm director, because I'm not going to build prisons for less violent, or addicted, mentally ill, non-violent people, which is what we're seeing coming to prison right now.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today. My name is Dana Davis, and I'm the program coordinator with Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland's Bonds Beyond Bars program and Bonds After Bars program. My question is regarding employment. Part of the hesitant in hiring people from our population is that the employers are uneducated as to the programming that they go through while incarcerated and who they have become today, which for some of them are very employable individuals. In what ways do you educate employers to know that there is programming, extensive programming going on inside of the institutions to prepare them for employment, such as the workforce readiness that goes on inside the institutions today?
Well, I'll weigh in. I think I mentioned earlier advocacy and education. A good place to start is HR. And I don't know if you're familiar with Haraco. I think they're having their meetings in the same space. But some engagement with Haraco and possibly presenting at one of their events to try to educate them, not only on the benefits you talked about, but my relationship with the Central Ohio Workforce Investment Corporation, funding they're getting through the county, TANF dollars, WIOA dollars. There's fully subsidized internships that employers can take advantage of. And I would say for startups, young companies, small businesses where you don't have 50, 100 employees, you may have 3 or 4. We actually leveraged that program maybe 5 years ago for an HR recruiter coordinator. They, the first 6 months of training, they compensated all that 6 months back. So there are some tools out there, I think, that can be leveraged, and this needs to be an education effort. I don't know if that helps.
And check the Ohio Enterprise Development Board. We have a new board that is working with outside employers to just help educate them, and I'm real pleased. I think Vicki Miller's here. I think I saw her just a minute ago. The Ohio Manufacturing Council has now embraced employment of some of our offenders, and Vicki is actually a liaison between our folks that are returning and the employers, and so I think we're going to have a lot of growth here. But I don't do very good technology, so the Department of Corrections probably didn't do a great job of communicating that.
I'm Charlie Warner, and my question is this. My understanding is that we now have ban the box legislation, barring questions about criminal backgrounds on the initial application in the public sector, but we don't yet have it in the private sector as many states do. Is there legislation now proposed, pending, or otherwise to extend ban the box to all employers?
There was, and I think that legislation kind of developed into the public sector. I think it was decided by the legislature that we could do this in the public sector, as many of the cities were early adopters of that. I would sense that it probably will resurface and with groups come in. And I think what we're saying is ban the box just gives people a chance. It gives people a chance to come in and look at an employer face to face and sell themselves. It doesn't hide anything. And I think there's a fear factor that is not well educated either. I think we have not done a good job with that. So I think that'll resurface again.
And if I could add to that, so along with ban the box, Ohio, no disrespect to Ohio, but we can look back as far as we want to. You've got states who limit the look back period, some cases 3 years, some cases 7. So even though you ban the box, they still get to run a background screen that goes back until you were born. And I think Ohio could really make some headway if they looked at possibly changing that look back period.
This is really, I'm really glad that we're having so many questions, but we have one more. I'm sorry. Oh, we can keep going? Okay, we can keep going. Come on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Richard Burke, and it's such a pleasure to be here and hear all this information. Because as a Kairos volunteer, and I see my compatriots over here, having been at London and Marion for Kairos, it's been a real pleasure to get to know a lot of individuals. And as all of you should know or do know, they've lost their families, a lot of them. They don't have friends that are supporting them. And so I told this one young man that I'm mentoring, I said, well, guess what? You're luckier than most of us because you get to pick your family now, and we're your family. And so we as you mentioned, employers can come in. What I have in mind with Reestablished Citizens, a community action group that I'm starting, is to be able to mentor individuals who don't have anyone else, who can come in and say, look, Rich, or look, Joe, or whomever, that I need help and direction. I don't know how to interview. I need help doing that. Is that something you'd be open to?
Yeah, and be sure, we've got a table over there that will take your name. And let me just say this, one of the things, no, I'm serious, we got a great table over here. But one of the things what I'm asking for are people to actually come in to some of the men and women that have done some terrible things in prison. And let's get people inside our segregation units to help turn lives around so they can spawn a positive prison career as well. So it's not just those people ready to go home. I think we need to give everybody an opportunity to grow and develop as well. So we are very interested in growing volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Warren Fishman. I read in the paper this morning that the prison system is going to eliminate the farming and the farms. And I was a little disturbed. I don't know enough about prisons to know whether it's relevant or not relevant and so on, but I also read that you were going to sell off the farmland. I really would encourage you to lease it short term to see if you could, if eventually maybe you would like to reverse that decision. But can you tell me why you did it? I know they said it wasn't relevant anymore, but why did it? I think farms need a lot of employees also. In fact, I hear all the time that they're having a hard time finding people to work in farms.
It was a tough decision. 42 years, it's been part of our heritage. 1868, the legislature said to commit to start farms around the penitentiary down here in Columbus. The fact is this. We have between 180 and 220 total inmates working on our farms. We release 20,000 people a year to Ohio's communities. And we are going to lease land. We're going to sell some land. We're going to lease some land. Our belief system, this is my decision, no one else's. I'm standing on this one. My belief system is that if we can bring private employers in, as we're working hard to do now, work with other partnerships like building cabins in state parks inside our prisons and transporting out, putting them down in the parks and do those kind of things are transferable skills. And we take some of those proceeds from selling that and invest in transitional housing and sober housing for thousands of people all over Ohio. I think it's going to touch thousands and thousands of lives, and there's a gap. And I will tell you this, I was in my church 2 months ago, and somebody stood up and said, Gary, I appreciate all you're doing, but how can you think you're doing a good job when you're releasing a high-risk sex offender to our community homeless? And I checked, and we're releasing a person who did 16 years based on the end of a sentence to a community homeless with a victim in the neighborhood. So we made a stop to that thanks to some community partners. And that person, by the way, had never taken one sex offender program in the thing. He was still a high-risk sex offender. Let me tell you this. Our goal ought to be to ensure that people that need to go out are placed in a secure setting, not homeless, and people that need to have a sober environment that they don't have in the community need to have that. And quite frankly, I love animals. I love cows. I love that. I love my kids. I took all my kids to the calving area behind my house when I was a warden. But I believe that I believe I owe you folks in this public safety and to reduce being crime victims, and that means I need to be touching thousands of people instead of just a few, and I think this is the best way to do it. It's very hard. I talked to all of my farm employees today personally, all of them today. Very hard to do, but in the end run, I believe that this is aligned with our mission of protecting all of you and reducing and continuing programming in the community.
Thank you, Gary. If hearing today about some of the great work in reentry in Ohio, I hope it's motivated someone here to reach out and work in our community. There's some things on the table about my organization, but you can always go to the ODRC website. There are agencies all over Ohio that provide these research-based programs, and I really implore you to do that. I will turn it over to Daren.
Well, thank you to all of you. I hope you'll take time that you can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide, through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Great conversation today, something I think many people are interested in and would be helpful and educational for people to see and hear, so please share that with them. Please help me thank our partners today, the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County, and our speakers, Gary Mohr, Paul Bellair, Keith Stevens, and our moderator, Denise Robinson. Thank you, guys. And thanks to all of you for being here. We look forward to seeing you next week. We're adjourned. Thank you.